Hi, so we are live. Hi everyone. So it's Aman Singh this side from University Living. Yeah. So we have gathered here in order to have a panel discussion regarding what exactly has been happening in Australia and the latest updates that we can get from the industry experts that we have gathered. So I'll quickly give you a brief introduction of all the panelists that we have on board, and then I'll let you know how exactly the event is going to be like. So during the first hour, what we'll be doing is we'll be discussing the general questions that the students have and the other fraternity people have regarding what exactly is going on, what are the latest updates in terms of visa, universities, accommodation and other aspects, right? And then we'll move on to a live Q&A session wherein the attendees can ask the questions through live chat, and me being the moderator, I'll just address the same question to the concerned set of panelists. So I'll quickly give you an introduction of who all we have on the panel. So we have Mr. Sagar Bahadur. He is the Principal Advisor, Strategic Initiatives from University of Queensland. We have Ms. Ravneet Pahwa. She is the Deputy Director and CEO South Asia for Deakin University. We have Mr. Abhizar Merchant. He is the country head of India and Sri Lanka for Macquarie University. We have Ms. Manisha Agarwal from RMIT University. She is the country head and school engagement vice president for RMIT University. Then we have on board Mr. Ravi Lochan Singh. He is the president of ARI and MD of Global Reach. We also have Miss Annie on our panel. She is the Director of Education at Victorian Trade and Investment. Then we have Miss Sally. So she is the National Sales Director for Scape Student Accommodations. We have Mr. Prakash, who is the Head of Business and Retail for Ebix Cash World Money. We have Miss Chani Sehgal. She is the Head of Marketing and Business Channels at SDFC Credila. So I'll just get Miss Annie as a panelist. Perfect. So a few of our panelists, especially Mr. Ravi and Miss Sally, they are currently in Australia. So I believe, Mr. Ravi, uh, you joined us from Melbourne as of now, and I believe you have started working from office as well. Yeah, Mr. Ravi, I just need to just a second. Yeah, Mr. Ravi, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah,
Yeah,
now
hi,
now
Aman.
you're audible. Yeah,
I've joined you from Sydney, not Melbourne, and certainly
yeah.
in my office at this point of time. Go ahead, Aman.
Yeah. So, Mr. Ravi, you are the president of ARI. So, in your role, in your designation, you play a very important role in bridging the gap between Australian universities and education consultants in India. So, I would request you to probably let our audience know a bit more about what exactly you do in your role, and if you have any latest updates from that point of view for our audience. Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, okay. Uh, well, ARI, as you all know, has been around for 24 years, and we've seen a few such situations in the past too. Once around 2009 to 2011 period. Two, we were faced with a fairly significant engagement with the government and the sector when an external factor impacted our industry. However, what we have seen in the last couple of months, since March primarily, is that we have had to refigure our own strategies every month. Like in the middle of March, when things started affecting all of us, AD's role at that time was try to still see if we can get a July intake to happen. And we, in fact, went out and requested universities to defer their intake by a couple of weeks, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and also work on a November intake so that students who were looking at going overseas this year could still go overseas. However, when we moved somewhere around April, around middle of April, it became quite clear to most of us that July intake will not happen or cannot happen. And then we went out and made a 10-point recommendation to the various departments of the government. We work very closely with the Department of Education, Department of Home Affairs, and also the Department of Trade, which is Austrade. And we made a 10-point recommendation to the government, which has been taken up very seriously. In fact, it was considered by the COVID-19 task force by the government. Because at that time, most of us were being told that there cannot be an international travel till a vaccination can be found. And this is when we went out and suggested that we cannot really wait for a vaccination to happen, but instead we need to work around possibly building in quarantine arrangements along with the travel and still hope for the international travel of students to take place. And that was somewhere around April-ish. And then over a period of time, as it became quite obvious that students would need to start off possibly with an online course and then go on to study thereafter, AD actually did two things. One, it went to the government of India to try to seek a kind of a recognition for students who have partially done a program of study in India and rest of the program overseas. And that work is still going on. The other thing is that we went back to the government and Department of Home Affairs and said that can we interpret the current regulations around post-study work to include a recognition for post-study work of students who have partially done a course online. And from what we see is that those both these activities where AD has had a role to play has brought about a bit of a clarity for the industry. Just last week, AD organized a webinar with the 3 government departments, and thereafter a FAQ was issued, and all that has given out kind of a direction and understanding as to what could happen. While I'm at it, I can also share with you that now we are actually starting off our second line of engagement. Once the borders do open up, even if it's in a limited way, what we would need is making Australia attractive once again, and for which we are now pitching into the government how possibly we can add on a post-study work additional year to students coming into Australia over the next 2 years and things like that. So AD has had a role to play on this, and you are right, I am very much in Sydney. Life is very much back to normal or getting very close to normal in Australia, and I don't have to wear a mask to come to office. And so hopefully things will be back and well, even in India at your end.
Great. Good to hear that, Ravi. So when can we expect you in India?
When you let me fly into India. I think that's the big question with most of us as students and all of us have is when can we really travel into India and we don't have to go into a quarantine at a hotel or wherever near the airports in India. Maybe another 6 months, hopefully. And I think that's what's expected generally.
Okay, very well articulated, Ravi. So moving on, Sally, you are operating from Melbourne, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, Sally, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes, that's right, Aman. I'm based in Melbourne. I work for Sept, Student Accommodation. Falling into that is into our portfolio are 3 brands of accommodation: Sept, Atira, and recently Urban Nest. So we offer at the moment we have 12,000 student accommodation beds across Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and Adelaide. And to add to that, in terms of COVID and its impact, obviously with the move to online courses, has seen students spending a lot more time at home. And so we've had to make sure we've made amends to our business to ensure we keep our staff and of course our students, residents safe over this period.
Okay. Okay. So you are still working from home from Melbourne?
No, so we do have, I am working from the office. We do have staff in the office, obviously with buildings, we have 24/7 support in all of our properties. And so management have certainly been in the offices over this time just to be able to support the staff on site and the students. But things are certainly returning back to normal in Australia as the situation improves here as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, Good to hear that, Sally. So I'll get back to you once we have, more questions regarding accommodations. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So next question, I would address it to Mr. Sagar. So Sagar, we'll have to definitely address the situation right now, which has been done by the previous two panelists. And obviously, what exactly has, changed geopolitically, and how Australia is the, probably one of the favorite study abroad destinations for study for Indian students?
So, I think this question becomes very relevant when you have a lot of options in hand, which fortunately, for Indian students, they have multiple options, when it comes to study abroad. Australia, I think, since long has been a choice of destination. I think it's because of the lifestyle that Australia offers, the safety, and I think the opportunities that it gives to its students. I think one of the major aspects is also quality, the quality of education. We are talking about world-class institutions. If we compare it to the per capita number of institutions versus, the institution present in Australia, we're talking about the highest per capita of, the highest ranked institutions in Australia. We're talking about 5 of their universities in the top 50 in the world. So I think that becomes a very attractive factor. And coming back to your question now, I think health safety becomes a prominent factor why students will more and more look at Australia. We're talking about a country which has very successfully been able to battle COVID-19. We're talking about states including Queensland, which I think in a couple of weeks would be able to eradicate and come back to regular life. So I think that's very important. And keeping this in mind, even the economic factors, the kind of impact which Australia would have, imagined. I think because now they're back to, normal, they're at least coming back to normal, the kind of impact is going to be much lesser. You'll very soon see the kind of opportunities which, are required for students, corporates, and, everyone as such. So I think, in my view, no doubt, with the way, they've handled and the way, the kind of offerings they have for students, I think that makes it one of the most favorable destinations still, and even in times to come.
So, Abhizar, would you like to add to that? Yeah. Abhizar, you need to unmute yourself. You have muted yourself. No worries. So, I'll come back to you later. Meanwhile, I'll ask a question to Miss Annie. So, yeah, Abhizar, you're there. Yeah, cool.
Just a couple of things to add on would be, one is, I think, geopolitically, what has changed as well is that a lot of Australia's major competitors as well, if you look at the US and the UK, they haven't been as successful in managing the virus as well. So if you look at the example of Australia and New Zealand particularly, they've had some incredible success in a very short period of time, where they've been able to almost reach close to eradication. In New Zealand's case, it's eradication, but also in Australia, getting there very, very quickly as well. So I think that's been a major, I think, change geopolitically as well, is that Australia and New Zealand in particular have been able to manage the crisis in a much, much better way compared to the others. The other point I would probably add on would be that if you look at the India-Australia relationship politically as well, in the recent weeks as well, we've seen both prime ministers come together and kind of sign a comprehensive agreement between each other's countries as well. So that covers education as well. So both prime ministers accepting that education is a major part of the relationship, and going forward, that's what they want to see greater, in terms of association and cooperation in that area. It's also been raised to a minister level relationship as well. So there's been some unprecedented stuff happening in the last 2 weeks in Australia, and people who've been in this industry for a while will know that